stole lunch money from a kid in a wheelchair, got choked unconscious and soiled himself on a movie set, and then moved to Russia to escape the consequences. This is the Steven Seagal story. So you think you know Steven Seagal. The ponytail, the mumbling, the man who somehow convinced Hollywood that he was the toughest guy alive. But here's the thing nobody talks about. His entire career was basically one long lie that somehow worked for 15 years before the whole thing collapsed in the most spectacular, embarrassing, and honestly, kind of hilarious way possible. Today, we are breaking down the full rise and fall of Steven Seagal. How a guy who allegedly stole from a disabled kid ended up as a certified deity, a fake cop, a crypto scammer, and a man with his own personal dictator friend. By the end of this video, you're gonna wonder how this man ever had a career in the first place. And honestly, so will you. Let's start at the beginning, because the origin of Steven Seagal is almost too good to be real. Born in 1952 in Lansing, Michigan, Seagal claimed to be a lot of things growing up. A tough kid feared by everyone around him, a street fighter, a dangerous young man. There was just one small problem. His own mother called him out. She said he was, quote, a puny kid who suffered from asthma. Not exactly the origin story of a fearless warrior. But Seagal did get serious about martial arts, specifically a style called Aikido. He trained hard, eventually moved to Japan in the 1970s, and actually became the first non-Japanese person to run his own Aikido dojo in Japan, earning a 7th degree black belt. That part is real. That part is genuinely impressive. The problem is, Aikido is one of the most criticized martial arts in the world for being almost useless in a real fight. It looks incredible in demonstrations, but only because the other guys are cooperating. The attackers basically throw themselves around to make the master look good. As one commenter perfectly put it, this makes pro wrestling look real. But here's where the story really begins. Seagal ended up back in Los Angeles teaching Aikido to celebrities, and one of his students just happened to be Michael Ovitz, at the time one of the most powerful agents in Hollywood. Ovitz was so impressed with Seagal that he decided to make him a movie star. Some people at the time said it was almost like a bet, that Ovitz wanted to prove he could make anyone famous, and Steven Seagal was his test subject. It worked. In 1988, Above the Law hit theaters and made nearly $19 million. Seagal was officially a star. Then came Hard to Kill in 1990, which had the biggest 3-day February opening at the time, grossing $9.2 million in its first weekend and nearly $50 million overall. Then Marked for Death, which was actually named the most violent movie of 1990 by the National Coalition on TV Violence. Then Out for Justice. Then, and this is the one that put him on another level, Under Siege in 1992. That movie made over $156 million worldwide. $156 million, with Tommy Lee Jones as the villain. Critics called it Die Hard on a Battleship. Roger Ebert praised it. It was genuinely a good action movie, and Seagal was right in the middle of it, looking like the real deal. For a brief moment in the early 1990s, Seagal looked like he was about to become the next Schwarzenegger, the next Stallone, a legitimate action legend. And then he absolutely destroyed it. Here's where the problem started, because while the movies were working, everything happening behind the camera was a disaster. Seagal had a reputation on set that was getting worse by the film. Stuntmen and actors who worked with him all told the same story. He would randomly kick people in the crotch to check if they were wearing protective cups. He actually punched and hit stunt performers for real during fight scenes because he thought it looked more realistic on camera, while also banning protective pads on set. He put one stuntman in the hospital after smashing his face into a mirror multiple times. He injured DMX's shoulder during filming for exit wounds, forcing the rapper to take days off. Multiple actors described having to keep a third eye on him at all times just to avoid getting hurt. John Leguizamo discovered this the hard way, when Seagal allegedly shoved him against the wall during filming of Executive Decision. People just could not stand this man. But there was one incident above all others that really exposed the gap between how Seagal saw himself and who he actually was. During filming of Out for Justice, Seagal bragged to everyone that because of his Aikido training, it was physically impossible for anyone to choke him unconscious. Impossible, he said. Jean-Claude Van Damme heard about this. The challenge was eventually taken up by martial artist Jean Labelle, one of the most respected grapplers in combat sports history, a man who had been training fighters for decades. And Labelle did not just choke Seagal unconscious. He allegedly caused Seagal to soil himself in the process. As Labelle himself diplomatically explained, if someone just had a big dinner, they might have a tendency to do that. Seagal's response? He claimed the whole thing never happened. He said Labelle was a, and I'm quoting here, pathological scumbag liar, and that there was never any confrontation at all. Nobody believed him. Nobody. Because by that point, everyone already knew that Steven Seagal had a very complicated relationship with the truth. Let's talk about the lies, because this is where it really gets wild. Seagal claimed he was recruited by the CIA and carried out undercover missions. He claimed he was the first private citizen to personally destroy a nuclear weapon. He claimed he once fought off members of the Yakuza, the Japanese crime syndicate, at his dojo. His ex-wife was asked about the Yakuza story. She said, and this is a direct quote reported by investigators, "It's a lie. He once chased a few drunks away from the dojo. Not the Yakuza, some drunks." He also claimed he taught legendary UFC champion Anderson Silva the front kick. Silva, who had been training combat sports his entire life, was supposedly learning kicks from a man whose martial art is mostly criticized for being impractical. Silva responded by posting a video that was widely understood as mocking Seagal's claims. Meanwhile, back in Hollywood, things were falling apart fast. In 1991, Seagal hosted Saturday Night Live. He has since gone down as the single worst host in the show's entire history, not because his sketches were bad, but because of how he behaved behind the scenes. He refused to do a Hans and Franz sketch because it included a joke about Arnold Schwarzenegger beating him in a fight. He would tell the writing staff their jokes were stupid on Wednesday, then expect them to keep writing for him through Saturday. SNL creator Lorne Michaels later made a joke about it live on air. When Nicolas Cage hosted the following season and worried about being seen as a jerk, Michaels told him on camera, no, that would be Steven Seagal. That's how bad it was. And then 1992 happened. Under Siege comes out, makes $156 million, and everyone thinks Seagal is back on track. But it was actually the peak, the very top of the mountain. From here, it was all downhill. He directed his next film, On Deadly Ground, in 1994, which ended with a 10-minute environmental speech that critics absolutely destroyed. Warner Bros. Had signed them to a 4-picture deal and watched each movie make less money than the one before. After Fire Down Below bombed in 1997, they did not renew his contract. His next film, The Patriot, in 1998, was his first direct-to-video release, and he funded it himself, filming it on his Montana farm. The man who had been making $156 million Hollywood movies was now funding his own straight-to-video projects. Between 2003 and 2008, he entered what film writers politely call his most prolific period, basically churning out direct-to-video movies every few months with generic titles like Out for a Kill, Mercenary for Justice, and Force of Execution. None of them scored above 50% on Rotten Tomatoes, most scored below 5 out of 10 on IMDb. One of them, The Foreigner, scored a perfect 0% on Rotten Tomatoes. 0%. That is genuinely hard to achieve. On top of that, his physical appearance was changing in ways that made action scenes increasingly difficult to film. Movies started being built around minimal screen time for Seagal despite him receiving top billing. He'd show up, film a few scenes, and leave, with directors trying to fill the rest of the runtime without him. He was also apparently partly to blame for the mafia getting involved in his career. His producing partner Julius Nasso allegedly had mob connections, and when that came out, it pulled Seagal directly into an FBI investigation. A journalist looking into the situation found a dead fish, a rose, and the note reading "Stop" on her car windshield, along with a bullet hole. The FBI looked into whether Seagal was behind the threats. They eventually found no evidence against him. but the scandal didn't exactly help his image. Now, in 2009, Seagal did something unexpected. He started a reality show called Steven Seagal Lawman, where he claimed to have secretly been working as a deputy sheriff in Jefferson Parish, Louisiana for over 20 years. And he picked it up. It got their highest premiere ratings ever. But the show took a dark turn in season 3, when Seagal teamed up with controversial Arizona Sheriff Joe Arpaio and led a raid on a property suspected of cockfighting, using a literal armored vehicle. The property owner, Jesus Sanchez Lovera, filed a $100,000 lawsuit claiming that over 100 prize chickens were killed in the raid, along with an 11-month-old puppy that was shot dead. Seagal denied wrongdoing. The lawsuit was later dropped under circumstances that were, let's say, unusual. The show was canceled shortly after Seagal was sued for allegedly sex trafficking women, one of a very long list of allegations made against him by multiple women spanning from 1991 onward. 3 women sued him for sexual harassment in 1991, settling out of court for $50,000 each. In 1995, he faced lawsuits involving threats and alleged assault during filming. In 2010, a lawsuit accused him of using women as what the filing described as a sex toy and alleged the illegal trafficking of females. Portia de Rossi publicly shared her experience, describing how Seagal unzipped his pants during what she thought was an audition, and she ran out. Juliana Margulis and Regina Simons also spoke publicly about disturbing experiences. It should be noted that none of these cases resulted in criminal convictions, and many were settled or dropped. But the sheer volume of allegations made it impossible for Hollywood to continue looking the other way. By 2016, Steven Seagal did something almost nobody saw coming. He became a Russian citizen. He had been cultivating a relationship with Vladimir Putin for years, attending martial arts events together, publicly calling Putin one of the greatest world leaders alive today. In 2018, he was actually appointed Russia's special envoy to the United States. He also received Serbian citizenship. In February 2023, Putin personally awarded him the Russian State Order of Friendship. The man who once claimed to be a CIA operative was now working as a representative of the Kremlin. And then came the crypto chapter, because at this point, why not? Seagal became the worldwide ambassador for a cryptocurrency called Bitcoin Second Generation, allegedly accepting $250,000 in cash plus $750,000 in tokens in exchange for promotion. The small detail he forgot to mention, that he was being paid to promote it. The SEC fines him $330,000 for failing to disclose the payment. He paid $75,000 toward the fine and then stopped showing up to court, and then moved to Russia permanently, where he still lives today. So here's where we land. Steven Seagal went from a $156 million box office hit to a crypto scammer hiding in Moscow. From action hero to punchline. The SNL writers hated him. The stuntmen feared him. The actors avoided him. The women who worked around him came forward with story after story. The FBI investigated him. The SEC fined him. The martial arts world laughed at him after the Jean LaBelle incident. He allegedly stole lunch money from a disabled kid in school. He allegedly got choked unconscious and soiled himself by someone he said could never beat him. He claimed to be CIA. He claimed to have invented the front kick. He claimed none of it happened. Steven Seagal is what you get when someone built an entire identity out of things that aren't true, gets incredibly lucky for about 5 years, and then spends the next 30 years refusing to accept that the luck ran out. He came from a time when you could say anything about yourself and nobody could Google it to prove you wrong. Now they can, and they did. The fall of Steven Seagal isn't just about one bad movie or one scandal. It's about a man who convinced an entire industry he was something he wasn't, and then couldn't figure out why the illusion stopped working. That would be it, so bye!